today we're doing something a bit different. It's like a laser focus on this book that you, the learner, sent to us.
Okay.
Change Management for Asset Management.
I like it.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
But we're going to try and like pull out all the juicy bits.
Okay.
So it's like you get the cheat sheet version right.
Exactly.
Without having to wade through a whole bunch of technical stuff.
Yeah.
So this is your sort of like personalized deep dive into this topic.
And I think what makes this source so fascinating is the author's background.
Yeah.
You know, starting as a maintenance fitter and tool maker and working their way up to these more strategic roles. It gives the book this real grounded perspective, I think.
I think so too. And you know, the learner, you brought this to our attention, and we're thinking you're probably trying to figure out how to deal with all the changes that are happening.
Right.
You know, in your organization, maybe even in your own career. And first glance, asset management and change management, you know, might sound a bit, well,
dry, technical.
Yeah. But we're going to show you why these two things are surprisingly connected.
Yeah.
And actually really interesting.
I completely agree. I think that a lot of the language might be specific to these fields.
Okay.
But the principles underneath are applicable to anything.
Okay.
So whether you're dealing with physical things like equipment,
right,
or whether it's more the things you can't touch, like processes and the people, this connection between asset management and change management offers a really valuable way of thinking.
All right, so let's get into it.
Let's dive in.
The author starts by talking about their early career. Yeah, very hands-on, focused on the physical stuff.
Right.
Machines, tools, getting things done.
Yeah.
But then there's this moment of frustration.
Okay.
Where upper management makes decisions that just completely ignore what's happening on the ground. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I think so too. And it comes back to different levels in the organization. Right. Having different viewpoints. So upper management. Yeah. They're thinking about the big picture, the long-term financials, the risks across the whole life of the asset.
Okay.
You know, they're constantly trying to balance cost and risk and performance.
Okay.
And sometimes that high level view can feel a bit detached.
Yeah, a bit disconnected.
Yeah.
From what's actually happening day to day.
Exactly.
And so for the author, that frustration was a turning point. It led to a realization that asset management isn't just about, you know, fixing things when they break. Right. It's about actually squeezing as much value as you can out of those assets. Yeah. For as long as they're useful.
Throughout their life.
Yeah. And a key part of this is adaptation. Because things change constantly, right?
Always changing.
New regulations. Technology leaps forward.
Yeah.
Business goals shift.
It's a moving target.
It's a moving target, exactly. And that's where change management comes in.
Yes.
It's not just a nice to have anymore.
No.
It's the essential ingredient for navigating those inevitable shifts smoothly.
Because without a structured way of managing that change, the best asset management plans in the world will fail. Okay. If the people can't actually adapt how they work.
I like that. Change management is like the oil. Yeah. That keeps the gears of asset management turning.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, when things need to shift.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting angle.
Okay.
It's not just about big companies.
Right.
The author argues that both asset and change management are crucial skills.
Yes.
For individuals too. So whether you're running a small business, managing a project team, or even just thinking about your own career path.
Absolutely.
You're constantly making asset management decisions.
Right.
Where do you invest your time and resources? What are the risks involved? How do you perform at your best?
And the learner, if we apply this to your own life, you know, you manage your own assets.
That's
your home, your car, your skills, your knowledge.
Yeah.
You make decisions about their upkeep. When to upgrade, maybe when to replace them.
That's true.
And how they can help you achieve your own goals.
Right.
And you're certainly no stranger to change, right?
Definitely not.
New technologies coming along, new career paths.
Yeah.
Your personal circumstances changing all the time.
Constantly, yeah.
So while we are talking about it in the book, in a business context, these are really fundamental skills for just navigating life.
Yeah.
So have a think about how these ideas apply to things outside of work as well.
Good point. And the book makes a helpful distinction between asset management, with quotes, and the management of assets.
Okay.
So asset management is that high-level strategic thinking.
Right. The boardroom discussions.
Yeah, the boardroom discussions.
Yep.
And the management of assets is more the hands-on.
Yeah. The day-to-day.
The operational side.
Keeping the wheels turning.
Keeping the wheels turning, right.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question.
Okay.
Why is understanding this difference so valuable?
Well, it's because when you're trying to implement change,
right,
you're dealing with people who have different perspectives.
Yeah.
So someone involved in the strategic asset management discussions, they'll be looking at long-term value and risk for the whole organization.
Right.
But somebody in an operational role, they're more focused on how that change affects their daily work.
Right. So you have to speak their language.
Exactly.
Okay.
You have to tailor how you communicate and how you manage that change based on who you're talking to.
So true. Okay. So the main message of the book seems to be that change management isn't just a side note. In asset management, it's crucial.
It is.
For every single decision an organization makes about its assets.
It's interesting, actually, all the different terms people use for what's essentially the same skill.
Okay.
You'll hear HR people talking about OCM,
right,
organizational change management.
Okay.
Engineers love to talk about configuration management, making sure that everything's documented and controlled.
Right.
And then people actually doing the work might talk about management of change. But the point is, no matter what you call it, change is constant.
That's true.
And having a structured way to deal with it is essential.
I like it. So a key result of good asset management is finding that right balance between cost, risk, and performance.
The sweet spot.
But what does right even mean in this context? Is there like a magic formula?
There's no magic formula, no. But the right balance will always depend on the organization, its goals, and the environment that it's operating in.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure. So a public transport company focused on reliable service, they're going to have a different approach to risk than, say, a mining company. Where the risks of equipment failure are much higher.
Right. A different level.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So it comes down to what the organization prioritizes and what its stakeholders expect.
And the book also breaks down risk into 3 levels. Strategic, tactical, and operational. Strategic being those big existential threats.
Right. Could sink the whole ship.
Exactly. Tactical, more about how you manage projects. And operational, the day-to-day risks of keeping things running.
Yeah. Making sure the lights stay on.
And those levels are all connected, right?
They are. They're all interlinked.
Give me an example.
Sure. So you could cut costs on maintenance to save money in the short term. That's an operational decision.
Right.
But that could increase the strategic risk of a major breakdown.
Down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So you can't just look at one level in isolation.
You need that holistic view.
Now, the book says that performance in asset management really begins with service delivery. How the organization actually provides value to its customers or stakeholders.
It's about outcomes.
Yeah. And that helps you pinpoint which assets, both the physical stuff and the less tangible things, are most crucial for achieving those outcomes.
I think what's often missed is the idea of capability. And the book defines it as the combination of physical and non-physical assets.
So it's not just the equipment?
Not just the equipment, no. It's also the people, the processes, the data, the systems, all working together to deliver a service.
Give me an example.
So a bus. A bus sitting in a depot isn't providing any value.
Right.
It's the whole system around it. The drivers, the routes, the maintenance schedule, the ticketing system.
And the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. That creates the transportation capability.
And the author makes a point that organizations are accountable for all the assets they rely on, even if they don't own them. So that's a broader way of thinking?
It is.
About responsibility.
It is.
Give me an example.
Sure. Leased equipment. Cloud-based software.
Right.
Even the skills of contractors you've hired.
Right.
Those are all assets that need to be managed.
Okay, so back to that distinction between asset management and the management of assets. The book suggests that the tactical level, those mid-level projects, can be really powerful for driving change.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, tactical projects are often very focused.
Okay.
They have clear goals and timelines.
Yeah.
And they're very tangible for the people involved.
Right.
So by building new ways of working into the milestones of those projects, you're making change a practical part of how work gets done.
I see.
It's not just an abstract concept.
Okay.
The author gives an example of embedding new data collection standards into a customer project because they needed that data to succeed. People adopted the new standards.
They had to.
It's a much more effective way to shift behavior than just a top-down mandate.
Interesting. Okay, so the book introduces 3 key concepts.
Right.
Alignment, adaptability, and assurance.
Let's break those down.
Let's do it. Starting with alignment.
Okay.
What does that actually look like?
Alignment is about making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to assets.
Right.
So the strategies, the processes for managing those assets, they all need to be in sync with the business goals.
Okay.
And all the different departments, finance, operations, IT, they all need to be working together towards those shared objectives.
I like it. And the examples the book gives are helpful.
Yeah.
Things like visual reports that connect the high-level strategy to what individuals do day to day.
Right. So people can see how their work contributes to the big picture.
Encouraging healthy debate.
Yeah. Positive challenge.
Yeah. Positive challenge between teams. And having a clear understanding of who your internal customers and suppliers are.
Right.
And even how technology plays a role. It should support the processes.
Yep.
Not dictate them.
Absolutely.
Okay. And all of these examples really highlight the importance of breaking down silos.
Exactly.
Right? Because when information flows freely and people understand how their role fits into the big picture and there's that culture of open communication and feedback.
Right.
That's when you have true alignment.
It's like a well-oiled machine.
It's beautiful. Okay. So next up is adaptability.
Okay.
And in today's world, things change so quickly.
At a rapid pace.
So how does adaptability factor into good asset management?
Well, adaptability is about being able to not just react to change, but actually anticipate it.
Okay.
And adjust how you manage assets accordingly.
So it's about being proactive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, give me some examples.
Sure. Using sensors to predict when maintenance is needed. Changing your processes because there are new environmental regulations. Even how companies had to rapidly adjust during the pandemic to their facilities and supply chains.
And at the heart of adaptability is continuous improvement.
Always looking for ways to do things better.
Yeah, that never stops.
It shouldn't.
Okay, and finally, assurance.
Okay.
This sounds like it's about having confidence that things are being done right.
It's about having trust.
Okay.
That your assets are doing what they're supposed to.
Right.
And that the organization is managing its responsibilities in the right way.
And the book has some really tangible examples here.
Yeah, what are they?
Things like having management systems in place and actually using them.
Right, not just a tick box exercise.
Exactly, having established best practices that everyone knows and follows.
Right.
Using clear work instructions.
Yeah, so everyone's on the same page.
Exactly, a balanced approach to quality checks and making safety a core value.
A core part of the culture?
Yeah, not just something you talk about.
Yeah, walk the walk.
Walk the walk. And all of these examples show that assurance isn't about bureaucracy.
Right.
It's about creating a way of working that you can rely on.
Consistent and reliable.
Yeah, that ensures your assets deliver value.
Yep.
And that the organization is managing its responsibilities.
It's about building trust.
Yeah, internally and externally.
Yeah, with all your stakeholders.
Okay, so moving on to what makes an asset management system tick.
Okay.
The book emphasizes having the right resources, making sure people have the skills at understanding clear communication, well-documented information, and proper allocation of budget and people.
Okay. And how do those things all fit together?
Well, these might seem like basic support elements, but they're actually crucial for making good decisions about assets.
Right.
Because if your team doesn't have the skills, or people aren't aware of the procedures, or information is buried somewhere, even the best strategies will fail.
Yeah. It's like building a house on sand.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
So a well-functioning AMS gives you that solid foundation for making informed decisions.
Timely decisions as well.
Yeah, when you need to.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get to operations.
Right, the doing part.
The doing part. Actually putting the plan into action.
Yeah.
using those assets and the capability of the organization to deliver those services.
And remembering that how the organization is structured isn't set in stone.
Right.
It needs to be flexible to adapt and ensure reliable service.
And what about external partners?
Good point. So many organizations rely on outsourced services or contractors for different parts of their operations.
Yeah.
Managing those relationships effectively is just as important.
To making sure they're contributing to the goals.
Exactly.
Okay. Next up is performance evaluation. And the book says it's often misunderstood.
How so?
It's not just about looking back at what you said you'd do.
Okay.
And seeing if you did it.
Yeah.
That's like a lag indicator, right?
Right.
True performance evaluation is about looking at both how effective you are doing the right things.
Okay.
And how efficient you are.
Doing them well.
Doing them well.
Right.
And in asset and change management, those lead indicators.
Yeah.
The things that tell you if you're on the right track.
Right.
They're really vital.
So important.
Yeah. Why is that?
Focusing only on lag indicators is like driving a car.
Okay.
Only looking in the rearview mirror.
I see.
You need to know what's coming up ahead.
Right.
So in asset management, a lead indicator might be the percentage of maintenance completed on time.
Okay.
And in change management, it might be the level of understanding that employees have about a new process.
Okay.
These leading indicators help you to course correct before it's too late.
And this leads to improvement.
Yep, the never-ending journey.
The never-ending journey of making things better.
Exactly.
Based on what you learned from that performance evaluation.
Right.
And this ties into ISO 55701.
The gold standard.
The gold standard.
Yeah.
The author, having been involved in the 2024 revision, really emphasizes how important this standard is.
Yeah, and why is that?
For bringing professionalism and consistency to asset management across all different industries.
So it's like a framework.
It's a framework. Yeah.
A set of best practices.
Exactly.
That helps organizations.
Right. And it helps in a few key ways.
What are they?
It makes sure your asset management is aligned with your business strategy. It helps you find that sweet spot between cost, risk, and performance.
Right.
It improves decision making.
Yeah.
It ensures you're complying with regulations and sustainability goals. And it fosters a culture of continuous improvement.
It's a shift from reacting to problems to proactively managing your assets for long-term value.
It's like having a recipe for success.
It is,
in asset management.
Yeah, a well-researched recipe.
Okay, so let's talk about the asset life cycle.
Okay.
And the book stresses that taking a long-term view is really key to getting the most value from your assets.
Okay.
Rather than just focusing on the immediate day-to-day.
So what does that look like?
Well, when you think about the entire journey of an asset, from when you first acquire it or design it, through its operational life and maintenance, to when you eventually renew it or dispose of it, you start to see that decisions made early on can have long-term consequences.
They ripple through.
Exactly. So considering the life cycle helps you make smarter investment choices. It helps you ensure your workforce is properly trained. It helps you adapt your organizational culture to new ways of working. And it helps you put feedback mechanisms in place to monitor how the asset is performing. And identify areas for improvement.
Throughout its life. So it's a holistic approach.
It is. And change management is obviously woven throughout this whole life cycle.
Of course.
Especially when you're bringing in new technologies, adapting to changing regulations or dealing with organizational shifts. The goal, it seems, is to really integrate those asset management principles. Like the ones in ISO 55001 with change management best practices, maybe something like ISO 120 to create that forward-thinking approach to asset decisions.
And what does that achieve?
Well, it helps you support long-term value.
And what else?
And a well-managed asset life cycle doesn't just save you money in the long run. It also leads to more efficient use of resources. Better service delivery, greater trust from your stakeholders. And a smoother adoption of new technologies. And new asset strategies.
It's about thinking ahead.
Okay. So let's talk about configuration management. And the book explains that it's more than just having a list of your assets.
It's more than an inventory.
It's a comprehensive way of ensuring consistency and control throughout an asset's life.
I like it. So it's like having a detailed blueprint for each asset and making sure that any changes to that blueprint are carefully managed.
And documented.
And documented.
Yeah. Okay, and the book highlights 3 key aspects.
What are they?
Functional configuration, what the asset is supposed to do.
Right.
Physical configuration.
Okay.
The actual components and design.
The nuts and bolts.
The nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
And derived configuration.
Okay.
Which are things that emerge from the functional and physical aspects.
Give me an example of each of those.
Sure. So for functional configuration, think of the speed limit on a road.
Okay.
That's what the road is supposed to do.
Right.
For physical configuration.
Yeah.
Think of the engineering drawings.
Okay.
For a piece of equipment.
Got it.
And understanding all 3 types helps you connect how changes impact both what an asset does and its physical makeup.
I like it. And the book then breaks down managing this configuration into 3 processes.
Right. Identification, control, and audit.
Okay, starting with identification.
So configuration identification is about clearly defining and documenting all the specific elements of an asset that you need to control.
Right.
These are called configuration items.
Okay.
And giving them unique identifiers so you can track them.
Right.
And this is really important for change management.
Why is that?
Because it helps you pinpoint exactly what's being changed and assess the potential ripple effects.
I see.
Okay, so then we have configuration control.
All right.
Which is about managing any changes to those identified elements.
Right.
It's about making sure any proposed change is reviewed, authorized, documented,
and implemented correctly.
This creates transparency and a clear history of changes, which is crucial for audits and compliance.
Right, keeping everything above board.
Exactly. And finally, audit.
So configuration audit is like a quality check.
Okay.
It's about verifying that the asset actually matches its documented configuration.
Right.
That any approved changes have been implemented correctly. And that there are no unauthorized deviations.
Okay, so it's making sure everything's as it should be.
Exactly. And this helps ensure the reliability and integrity of the asset.
Right.
And it supports continuous improvement in how changes are managed.
Excellent.
Okay, so the book then tackles some common misconceptions.
Okay, let's bust some myths.
Let's do it. So one of the big ones is that asset management is solely the responsibility of the engineering and maintenance departments.
A common one.
Yeah. And what does the author say about that?
Well, the author is very clear that while engineering and maintenance are vital.
Yeah, they play a key role. They do.
Yeah.
The responsibility for managing assets to deliver value belongs to the whole organization.
It's everybody's job.
Exactly.
Okay, another misconception is that ISO 55001 is some kind of magic bullet.
The silver bullet.
Yeah, that's going to fix all your problems.
Yeah, if only it were that easy.
Right.
So the author stresses that ISO 55001 is a management system.
Okay.
It provides a framework and guidance.
Yeah.
But it's not a substitute for actually doing the work of asset management.
You still have to put in the effort.
You do.
Okay, then there's the idea that asset management is only for big corporations.
Right.
And what do the authors say about that?
Strongly disagrees.
Okay.
The core principles of asset management, focusing on value managing risks, optimizing performance, they apply to businesses of all sizes.
Even the small guys.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, another